on there. Other reason.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Lichfield District Committee meeting being held on Tuesday, the 16th of September. This is a publicly broadcast meeting and it is streamed live via our website and via YouTube. I would ask everyone, therefore, to conduct themselves in an appropriate manner. Welcome those present in the public seating area and those people who are going to be speaking later, and ask you to be respectful to committee members, its officers and those who are speaking. I ask that you remain seated and quiet during these proceedings. My name is Councillor Chetland, Chair of Lichfield's Planning Committee. In a moment, I will ask everybody else participating in the meeting to introduce themselves. Before doing so, can I remind everyone in the meeting to ensure that your mobile and electronic devices are either switched off, muted, or silence the session. For those who have registered to speak, please can you ensure that your content is relevant to the material to the debate, and you're mindful of the allotted speaking time. If you go over that time, you will be asked to stop immediately. When speaking for the particular benefit of those following from home, if you can enunciate well and speak as clearly as possible, please. Me, because I'm deaf. Planning Committee is a non-political, quasi-judicial committee bound by National Planning Policy Framework, Lichfield's local plan and supplementary planning guidance. Our decisions are informed by planning considerations tied to these policies, but it is not a pure science. We must weigh up benefit and harm when coming to our conclusions. The arrangements for conducting this meeting will be as follows. Officers will introduce each application. Any members of the public or applicants and agents who have registered to speak will then be invited to address the committee in turn. Members are reminded to keep their questions to the point and on matters of clarification for planning issues only. Technical questions or clarification of details of the application will generally be best directed to the officers. Committee members will then discuss and decide on the officers' recommendations on each application. May I also be clear that we cannot receive questions or comments from anyone in the public seating area. Please be assured that the committee will aim to thoroughly question and consider all matters before it.
Sorry, I'm late.
In coming to a decision. When we come to vote on each application, I will initially ask all members to confirm if they are minded to approve the recommendation in the report by raising their hand. I will then ask those of you voting against the recommendation or abstaining to confirm the specific planning reasons you are doing so. In the event of a vote being carried against the officers' recommendations, I will ask officers to comment on the validity of the planning reasons, and if recommended by officers, ask members to vote again on whether to defer that item or further report on those reasons. If for any reason a member is not present for the whole of the item, they will be asked not to vote on an application. In fact, people just squeezing at the last. I will now ask all members and then officers participating to introduce themselves, and I should go in a clockwise direction from here.
Councillor Derek Cross, Vice Chairman.
Councillor Serena Mears.
Councillor Joe Powell.
Councillor Matthew Wallins.
Councillor Anne Hughes.
Councillor Hugh Ashton.
Councillor Sonia Clowerley.
Councillor Debbie Evans.
Councillor Michael Galvin.
Councillor Andrew Rushton.
Councillor Gian Patel.
Richard Thomas, Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Mark Evans, Staffordshire County Council Highways.
Claire Saint, Senior Planning Officer.
Stuart Evans, Legal Advisor. Ian Long, Managing Planning Consultant.
All right, Governance Officer.
Christine Lewis, the Elections and Democratic Manager and Deputy Monitoring Officer.
Thank you. Okay, apologies for absence. I believe we have Councillors Taylor, Salter and Marshall who've given apologies. Do we have anyone else? I don't think there is. Okay, thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the last meeting. You will have an opportunity to go through these. Are there any comments arising from minutes of the last meeting, please? Can I assume they're approved? All those in favour?
Chairman.
For tonight's meeting, we did have scheduled 3 applications. The first of which was 24/00715/FUL, which was land at the rear of 156 Main Street, Alney Wolds, Burton-on-Trent. That has now been withdrawn because the only reason it came to committee in the first place was an objection from the parish council, and as their objection has now been removed, it can be decided under delegated powers. That's how that will have been decided. And does anybody have any declarations of interest in relation to any of the matters? Okay, Councillor Wallens.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I had an email from Dominic Stanford and John Timpson about the Cricket Lane application. I haven't responded to any of the emails, and my voting intention won't be compromised with the result.
Okay, that's Hughes.
I have a personal interest in the same application as firstly deputy leader of the City Council, whose objection is why I haven't participated any of the meetings they had with councillors in the city, had with the planners or with the developers, but I have been aware of the discussions that have gone on, and I also have had the same emails that Councillor Wallens has had, and I've had an invitation, which I would probably accept if I wasn't away, from the developer who has given a nice cheque to women's football in Lichfield City, but don't think I'm influenced by that either.
Thank you. I think we probably all have those emails, so I don't think there's any need to declare those any further. Councillor Rushton.
For the same application, I know the object to speaking.
Sorry, in which application is that?
Land at Cricket Lane.
Land Cricket Lane, thank you.
Also on the Arkle Farm development, the ward councillor for that ward.
Thank you. Any other declarations, please?
I am the ward councillor for Cricket Lane. I have an open vote.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to the first application, which is land at Cricket Lane, 25/00267/OUT-FLM. I'll call Ian Long to present this for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. As just mentioned, this application relates to the Section 73 application to vary Condition 36 Highways England Swinfen Island Works with permission 18/01217/OUT-FLM to amend the trigger for the delivery of the Swinfen Island infrastructure works. The application site relates to that which was approved under the parent hybrid outline full application just mentioned, which is located to the south of Lichfield and comprised of single agricultural fields under arable cultivation, which was bordered by Cricket Lane to the north-west, Tamworth Road, the A51 and Lichfield Canal Restoration Site to the north-east, London Road to the south-west and the A38 to the south-east, existing hedgerows bound to the site from the surrounding highway network. The parent consent relates to outline planning. Parent consent relates to outline planning permission with all matters reserved except access for the construction of up to 520 dwellings in an area of up to 12.78 hectares for the provision of employment floor space. The use classes B1, B2, B8, including 2 points of access from Cricket Lane, comprehensive green infrastructure, including footpaths, cycleways, multifunctional open space, children's play areas, open space for sport and sustainable water drainage infrastructure, including balancing ponds, rerouting of Ashbrook and other associated ancillary infrastructure in Grand Lane. Consent was granted 16th of December 2022. Come on to an extract of the master plan, which you probably won't be able to make out for the majority of the room. But just briefly to point out to the access points for the residential and the commercial elements of the site. So you've got 2 access points for the residential elements on Cricket Lane, and a single signalised junction on London Road for the commercial part of the site. So the essence of condition 36 that was put forward by the applicant for the parent application in response to the data generated in 2018 in the VISIM transport model submitted at that time. Updated or additional data relating to the off-site Swinfen Island junction works was submitted to the relevant statutory consultees in June 2020 to aid in the consideration of the parent application at that time. This consideration yielded the wording for condition 36 as approved. Skipping around here, I won't read all of that, I'm sure you're familiar with it. The joint applicant has advised that the necessity for the current application is due to the Swinfen Island junction works being delayed by the contractor Amy, who are carrying out the works on behalf of Staffordshire County Council. It's understood that Amy have expressed an 89-week build-out time, which has recently been delayed until May 2026. So for reference, this would mean a completion of the works for circa January 2028 at the earliest. Joint applicants do not have control over the implementation of the Swinfen Island works. As summarised in paragraph 1.4 of the committee report, and as repeated, the original application calculated the impact of the development based on 2018 traffic survey data and modelling. The applicant has undertaken a new traffic survey in 2025, which demonstrates significantly lower figure than 2018 assessments projected figures for the assessment year 2026, which in other words is when the first occupations for the residential and commercial phases could occur. This is likely due to changes in public travel behaviours following the COVID-19 pandemic, in addition to the increased dispersal of vehicle trips across other parts of the local highway network following the opening of the Lichfield Southern Bypass in 2021. It's been demonstrated that the AM and PM worst case scenario would be substantially less than the forecast for 2026 as expressed in the 2018 generated data set. In addition to this, the AM peak average Swinfen Island junction journey time would still be considerably less than the time which the 2018 assessment predicted for the 2026 assessment year without any development on the site. The PM peak figures also display much lower journey time than the 2018 prediction. Following review of the submitted information and confirmed the application is subject to no objection from County Council Highways and National Highways. Residential development is currently underway, with residential units expected to be ready for occupation prior to the Swinfen Island junction works being completed. The commercial element yet to be commenced, as the developer requires this amendment to the condition in order to proceed with construction to avoid the potential for completed units sitting unoccupied. So that showed the as approved condition. And then this is the proposed condition, simply moving the trigger point from before the first occupation of or use of any of the buildings within any phase of development to prior to the first occupation of the 130th residential dwelling or occupation of the that number greater employment floor space hereby approved, whichever is sooner. And just as a way to kind of express what that would look like, the joint applicants have provided at a late stage the above shown plan, which articulates what 130 units would look like and the first commercial phases of commercial units which will come forward prior to the completion of the works. And there's just an extract plan for the improvements that would be made to Swinfen Islands. It has been raised that the LLFA have not been sorted on the application before you today. However, there are ongoing condition discharge applications in respect of both the residential element and the commercial element of the site, which are currently live. The applicants or the joint applicants continue to work positively with the LLFA on those applications, and it is expected that the approval of the details to discharge these conditions would be achieved in the near future. In conclusion, the proposal is supported by both Staffordshire County Council, the Local Highway Authority and National Highways. There will be no significant unacceptable impact on the operation of the highway, queuing times or safe operation when observing the interim development in full, a scenario which may not occur and certainly would be a worst case scenario at the end of the Swinfen junction works if it did occur. The application is supported by all relevant statutory consultees and brings the benefits of enabling the much needed mixed use residential and employment generate development to continue to be brought forward in a timely manner while the Swinford Island junction works are implemented by the relevant bodies. This will also allow for occupation units on site, which occupation of units on site, which would trigger the payment or implementation of several of the Section 106 obligations, meaning they can be utilised earlier. The proposal would also avoid a delay to construction jobs, including local jobs secured through employment and skills plans, or the much needed operational phase jobs of the approved employment area. Finally, there are a couple of supplementary items to raise in relation to the application, which can be found in the provided report, and the application benefits from a recommendation for. Thank you.
Thank you. We have two speakers in relation to this matter. We have someone speaking as against this proposal, and that is Russell Burton. We will have, we have three speakers, and then we have Joshua Parnham and Jessica Evans, who are speaking as the applicants. Each speaker is entitled to 5 minutes to talk. You will be given 30 seconds when you finish. In relation to the fact that there's two speakers, you get 2.5 minutes each, which totals 5 minutes. Okay. If one of you talks too long, you can sort it out with yourselves afterwards. Okay. So the first person would take a seat just for us at the front. The microphones are within the ceiling, so you don't have. So as long as you speak clearly, we should all be able to hear you, and I'd appreciate it as well. Okay, your 5 minutes will start from when you start to speak.
I'll get my glasses on me.
Please, if you
I think we've got plenty of these in the room. Okay. Thank you, Chair, for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Russell Burton. I'm a resident of Cricket Lane, and I'm speaking on behalf of my neighbours and my family. I'm here to express our strong objection to the developer's request to occupy 130 homes at the Cricket Lane development before improvements are made at Swinfen Island. From the outset, Persimmon Homes has demonstrated a disregard for residents' agreed plans and basic standards of conduct. As a resident of Cricket Lane, my neighbours and I have experienced significant disruption and distress as a result of the developer's actions, including excessive dust and debris affecting our homes, cars and property, sites full of skips and toilets positioned immediately adjacent to the residences, causing constant noise disturbance from reversing alarms, and an inappropriate site entrance off Cricket Lane, resulting in high volumes of HGV traffic, frequent speeding, vehicles mounting pavements, deliveries at all hours, and constant dust, mud and debris on Cricket Lane, managed by a very noisy and largely ineffectual road sweeper. Ongoing construction without an approved flood risk and drainage plan, putting Cricket Lane at increased risk of flooding. Saturday working and bank holiday working contrary to the original agreement, and the unannounced removal of our hedge that has characterised our lane for the last 60 years at least. Despite repeated attempts by residents to engage with Persimmon Homes constructively, the developer has shown no willingness to listen or take action to improve the situation of Cricket Lane residents. Allowing house occupation and further building to proceed under these circumstances would only reward poor behaviour and encourage further breaches of approved plans and conditions. More importantly, it would ignore the severe traffic congestion already experienced daily on London Road, which can only worsen without proper resolution. The developer's submission suggests that traffic congestion on London Road would be no worse than pre-COVID levels in 2019 if the homes were to be occupied. For those of us around then, we remember how dire traffic congestion was before COVID. Traffic queuing from Swinford Island beyond the Cricket Lane junction and towards the Shell garage, backing up on Cricket Lane to join the congestion on London Road. We had to think how far back up Cricket Lane this would extend with cars from a further 130 homes, plus construction traffic for the development itself. In addition, I note that the developer's technical note focuses on the implication for traffic flow on the strategic road network and specifically states other infrastructure associated with the development, including the residential site access junctions, are outside the extent of the VISIM model. This again demonstrates the developer's disregard for the impacts on the residents of Cricket Lane itself. The construction of the canal bridge associated with the development crossing Cricket Lane at the Tamworth Road end will mean that the unsafe London Road junction is the primary means of access and egress from Cricket Lane for both existing and new residents and the developer's own construction traffic. A recent major incident at the junction demonstrates that we have a genuine risk to our lives if we are forced to use this junction without improvements at Swinford Island and the junction itself. We therefore respectfully request that you withhold approval to occupy 130 homes at the Cricket Lane junction. However, if consent is granted to occupy 130 homes at the development, we request that you impose and enforce the following conditions prior to any occupation, least reduce the impact on our lives. Make the proposed improvements to the junction of Cricket Lane with London Road before occupation of the development and the construction of the canal bridge crossing Cricket Lane at the Tamworth Road end. To reduce the duration of disruption on Cricket Lane, complete the proposed widening of Cricket Lane along with improvements and a new footpath, including construction of the 2 new permanent junctions into the new development, closure and reinstatement of the temporary construction access with ongoing construction traffic taking access off London Road, reinstate our hedge and repair our existing footpath, move the construction storage away from the Cricket Lane boundary further into the site, and the drainage and flood risk mitigation proposals must be approved, including hydraulic modelling of the surface water flow route that demonstrates at least no detriment to Cricket Lane or the development itself. The immediate provision of an on-site wheel washing facility to reduce mud and debris on Cricket Lane until the new construction access is established off London. Thank you again for this opportunity to share and our perspective. We, the existing residents of Cricket Lane, have no wish to unduly delay the construction.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Burton. Appreciate it. Okay. You want to take your seat back, and we have 2 speakers next, 2.5 minutes each, and that is Joshua Parham and Jessica Evans. So both move forwards by all means.
Because I might be a bit longer, but Josh is a bit shorter. If we just split the 5 minutes.
Mind which 5 minutes.
Okay, cool.
Okay, from the time when you start speaking.
Good evening, Chair, members of committee. This Section 73 application seeks to vary Condition 36 under the Outline Planning Permission land south of Cricket Lane. The Outline Planning Permission for 520 homes and 12 hectares of employment was granted in December 22. The reserve matters for both the residential employment phases were approved last year. Persimmon are bringing forwards the residential units, and Endurant, previously named St Modwin Logistics, will be delivering the employment units. Condition 36 requires off-site highway improvements at the Swinford Island to be completed before any of the buildings are occupied. The condition includes wording that allows another trigger to be agreed with the local planning authority in consultation with National Highways and County Highways. We are seeking a variation to Condition 36 to allow 130 homes and 3 employment units to be occupied prior to the Swinford Island improvements being completed. The highway improvements at Swinford Island will be carried out by Amey and National Highways. The works have been subject to delays and are now scheduled to commence in January 26 with an 89-week programme. Under the current wording of Condition 36, this means that no homes or employment buildings can be occupied until at least the end of 2027. Persimmon have commenced construction with first legal completion due by the end of the year. Endurant have a contractor lined up to commence construction next month to deliver the first 3 employment units by autumn 26. The delivery of both the first phases of residential and employment are hampered by Amey and National Highways' delayed delivery timescales. Persimmon and Endurant have engaged with the local planning authority, National Highways and Staffordshire County Highways to find a pragmatic solution to ensure the first phases of development are not delayed whilst the Swinford Island improvements are being carried out. Traffic impact of the Outline Planning Permission was assessed using 2018 traffic survey data. To better reflect existing traffic conditions, new traffic count survey data has been undertaken this year. The assessment of the 2025 traffic data found that the interim development will have a minimal effect on capacity of the strategic road network and no effect on highway safety. Both National Highways and Staffordshire County Council raised no objection to the proposed variation. If the amended trigger cannot be agreed for the employment phase, it will mean that Endurant will not issue a bill contract for construction to commence next month, as it is not viable to have buildings sit vacant for over a year. This will result in delayed delivery of construction jobs, employment, training and skills opportunities, approximately 346 operational jobs and £510,000 of business rates per annum that would be generated by the first 3 units. Endurant have already received strong interest in the first phase of employment. There are 3 national and local businesses that are interested in taking up the units, but they all require occupation next year. If Endurant cannot guarantee occupation next year through the approval of this Section 73 application, then these potential occupiers will take space elsewhere outside of the district.
In relation to the residential phase of development, should this Section 73 not be approved today, the first occupations for the residential dwellings would be delayed until 2027. This delay would significantly impact the commercial viability of the site and would hinder Persimmon's delivery of the site in its entirety. Furthermore, the initial 130 dwellings is set to bring the following key benefits to the wider community, which should be considered. Supporting the district's 5-year housing land supply, as Lichfield is currently unable to demonstrate a 5-year housing land supply. This development is set to contribute 70 dwellings towards the 5-year supply up to 2026. The approval of this Section 73 will avoid delaying the delivery of these much needed new homes and ensure that the housing supply is not hindered. In addition to this, the approval of the Section 73 and occupation of the first 130 dwellings should bring forward 46 affordable units and 2 leaps on site. The proposed development also triggers the payment and implementation of several financial obligations, which will mean the early utilisation of £730,853 in Section 6 obligations to fund provision of a footbridge and cycle path on London Road over the canal, the improvements and extension of existing surgeries, including £212,492 in sales to fund improvements to the wider community infrastructure. The occupation, the initial 300 dwellings should also generate 3 million tax revenue and £250,000 in council tax revenue. It is therefore respectfully requested that this Section 73 application be granted in accordance with the officer's recommendations as set out in the committee report.
Thank you both very much. Clarification questions, if I may, to start with. I think 2 for you, Ian, if I can. Did I notice it? I noted in our paperwork that the start date was January 26. Am I right in thinking you said the current start date is May 26, going through to Jan 28?
As I understand it, I'd heard May, but is it January? Is that the correct?
Well, I've spoken to Amy recently. They say May is more likely, 18 months rather than 89 weeks. It's slightly quicker period, but there's a delay to May. It's been linked to several issues with combining all the 278 works together and some national grid ongoing issues with the substation.
Thank you. And the other question I had in relation to that, I believe there are other roadworks due to take place as part of this bill, particularly in relation to the HGV turns into the industrial area and the work that was mentioned previously in relation to Cricket Lane at London Road. Yeah, but I don't know if she'll give us an update or Highways give us an update as to those works, and do we know if they're scheduled?
Timing of those works.
Timing of those works.
That'd be with Amy as well, wouldn't it?
It is, but I can give an update.
Please, for upgrade, yeah.
Yes, so the works that will relate to the development include the Swinfen Island roundabout, which has been subject to this application. There are 2 new accesses along Cricket Lane, which are being discussed and mentioned both in Ian's presentation and by speakers. The new crossroads, signalised junction at Cricket Lane, London Road, and then the road that puts off the L pub. So that's part of the scheme. And there's a new signalised junction that serves the employment area. So that's between Cricket Lane and Swinfen roundabout. That will also be the major construction access for the employment site. So it will come forward first as a temporary junction to keep traffic away from Cricket Lane. And then in the longer term, it will form a signalised junction. And there's also a Toucan crossing that sits between Cricket Lane and the city centre. further north.
And a commencement date for one or both of those?
So they're all wrapped up in the same section 278 agreement. And the conditions to be discharged for that phasing, they're still live for the main application site. So Amy has some control over that. So do we as County Council, as a consultee, planning authority as the ones in charge of discharging the conditions. So in terms of phasing, we do have some influence to make sure that things are done in the right order, things are done to minimise overall disruption, but also as speedy as possible. So there's always a balance.
Just one for Ian. It was mentioned earlier in relation to the flood risk and drainage plan. It is not yet conditioned or completed. Is there a timescale for that to be completed? Is that tied into any construction of houses or?
Yeah, so the surface drainage scheme is triggered prior to occupation again, but there are condition discharge applications live at the moment in respect to both the residential and the commercial phases, which are proceeding. I'm not the case officer for those applications, but I understand they're proceeding accordingly. There's extensive work, as I understand, being done between the applicant and the lead local flood authority as the key statutory consultee for those condition discharge applications.
So those conditions they have to be completed, submitted and completed prior to occupation, irrelevant to what we decide today.
It's not irrelevant. I think it's just that they are a condition discharge which is live at the moment as well.
Some questions from Councillor, please. Councillor Ashton.
Thank you. Do we have any idea of the figure of 130 or 18,157 square metres was arrived at? Is this a figure plucked from the air, or is there any rationale behind this?
I would imagine it was derived from an assessment of the traffic data from the updated data set, which will have dictated the acceptable extent of the additional units, new floor space.
We were told all the wonderful things which would happen if the commercial units were occupied. Do we have any expectation that the commercial units will in fact be occupied before the residential ones?
As we understand it, there's been strong market interest in those units. As has been explained today, the developer for the commercial side is keen to get the Section 73 or the amendment to the condition through before they're able to instruct upon the build out, which would then have an impact upon the occupation of those units, depending on when those would come forward. I understand that there has been interest.
So we can assume that the emphasis will be on commercial rather than residential.
There's planning benefits to both sides, absolutely. For the commercial, as has been talked about, it's bringing the jobs in sooner. It's bringing business into the authority. It's the employment and skills plan that could be delivered through the use of those units. But for the residential, obviously this would allow the delivery and the delivery of up to 130 residential units within a timely manner. And obviously with the housing land supply position of the council being where it is, we need to be relying more upon these sites which have benefit from planning consent to effectively come in and help shore up that housing land supply position, which has been significantly weakened since the reversion back to the standard method for determining housing need. So there are clear planning benefits to both the residential and the commercial that can be achieved through Section 73, which is before you today.
And the last question is, based on past experience, how long after this proposed trigger has been pulled do we expect construction to continue? In other words, how long will the residents have to put up with the residential / commercial traffic plus the construction traffic?
I'm not 100% clear on the build out programme for either element, but it would obviously enable or facilitate the timely delivery of the units, not just in terms of them being occupied earlier, but it would certainly for the commercial, it would enable that development period to come forward and be completed earlier than otherwise if say they continue to have to wait for the works to be completed before they could get on site.
Okay, thank you.
Can you just explain the 5-year housing supply situation in Lichfield at the moment for most people who might be watching elsewhere and don't fully understand?
Sure. So
the predicament we're in at the moment.
The predicament that we are in. So in essence, the council has to demonstrate what is known as a 5-year housing land supply of demonstrable deliverable housing land. The council's housing numbers were changed towards the end of last year when the National Planning Policy Framework was updated, which included a reversion back to what's known as the standard methodology for determining housing need, which has seen effectively, an easy way to understand it is the yearly housing need for the district is effectively trebled because of this change, which took the council from the comfortable 9.9 year supply that it had previously to a certainly more perilous position of being 3.65 years. And if you fall below the 5-year mark, then you can be subject to what's known as speculative development proposals to come forward on land which has not been allocated for development, doesn't benefit from planning consent, and is effectively on land that the council has either not been aware of or has only sort of come forward at a late stage outside of the plan making process. So what sites like this can do is it can come in and help shore up the housing land supply position that you've got, because if we can say to planning policy, okay, 130 houses can now be delivered and occupied on this site, this means that 130 houses can go towards our housing land supply requirement and start to eat away at the deficit between the requirement and the position that we have currently.
Okay. No, that's plenty. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Ashton. Councillor Ann Cattell, please.
Our first speaker, Robert Burton, seemed to imply that the developers have been ignoring about 8 different conditions that were laid upon the planning permission when it was given to them. Have the planning officers heard any complaints before?
I understand there's been complaints received to the council. I know colleagues have been out on site within recent history, met with local residents of the site. I was unable to attend personally, but coming back to the conditions, there are a number of condition discharge applications that are live at the moment. The applicants have been working diligently with officers to make their way through the many condition discharges that are required, which is also required engagement with the bodies such as Staffs County Highways, the LLFA, within the statutory consultees that you would expect. But yes, we have heard local resident complaints.
Have they been resolved?
Broad answer, I guess they're ongoing. We are not turning our back on the local residents. We want to be able to be responsive and reactive if there are concerns that are raised, whether that be through passing them along to our colleagues in planning enforcement, or whether they can be dealt with through us as development management officers for the condition discharge applications. So yeah, it's an ongoing process that I can see that we're through.
One of the complaints, or a few of the complaints, seem to be with ongoing behaviour, like starting at 6:30 in the morning, dust clouds everywhere, that sort of thing. Has any of that been resolved? Not
to interrupt, is this something that can be referred to planning enforcement to follow upon those particular conditions that are? Has it been breached? Because obviously we're not in a position to say whether they are or aren't at the moment.
So planning enforcement do have a channel which people can go through in order to engage with them and to register issues, as do the county highways department as well, if there's anything highways related. So, you know, if it's something that's perceived to be an enforcement issue, then that's a good way to go about it, because it gets you straight to the heart of who you need to speak to. Having said that, you know, a number of the complaints that have been raised have come directly to us in development management, which again is fine. You know, we're not turning our back on that. It's just that, you know, if it's an enforcement matter, go to the enforcement officers first, and, you know, that's direct to the source.
Councillor Wallens.
Cheers, thank you, Chair. In relation to the Swinford Island works, if they're not delivered until later, how can we reassure residents about congestion and safety in the meantime?
In sort of highways related there.
In terms of the modelling that was undertaken, so the Vision model, which one of the speakers, so that was built for a large area district, was approved by National Highways, what should be used for that junction. What the developer's done with the extra survey, in simple terms, shown traffic we have today at 2025, which we would say is the opening year, to start opening some of the houses, be better than was predicted in 2018 data. It was scheduled to grow for the next 7 years at that time. So because they've done that, we're in a better position now, even with the development. We had been if the predictions had come through those 7 years. But because the County Council has applied a trigger on the development, on the permission that was based on the 2018 data, that mathematics then, it's very hard to go back and say, well, actually, as a County Council, we'd like to change our mind. Because all the data itself has changed. That when an applicant puts that back to us and says, well, these numbers have changed, so it's actually better, it's reasonable for us to accept that. But it's important to note that when the first application came in, both Staffordshire County Council Highways and National Highways asked for more modelling to be undertaken, for more information, for more survey data. So there was an initial request that the applicants had to go back and do more work. We've sat down with the applicants' consultants, we've analysed their data. We're confident that the work they presented does show that it's reasonable to allow the developer to construct this level of work. There's a question about how the figures might have been arrived at. What's important to us is the number they've chosen, the 130 dwellings, the level of employment. It does give a simple answer in the morning, Peak, to say it's better than if we did nothing with the 2018 data.
Couple of other things I want to mention. Is there a fallback or penalty if the Highways England delay these works by any chance? So if it's been delayed at all?
Penalty?
In other words, is any, you know, well, yeah, repercussions or anything? Just if the work gets delayed for whatever reason?
It's a county council decision now. So the powers to be at the county council are actually the ones in charge of making that decision. They're responsible for AMI and ensuring the work goes ahead. So if you can see that through, that'd be brilliant. I think Councillor Wallens had one more point.
I've got a couple of other things as well. In terms of, because I've heard that there's obviously going to be business units that come in. What is it? Is it going to be like another Co-op, Greggs or Costa, or is it something different?
There's a range of B use classes of consent under the B1, B2, B8, I believe. And the onward the onward occupants of those units are not apparent yet. That would come forward, obviously, as part of a submission for those sites.
Fair enough. And one more thing I'd like to mention, Chair. In reality, is this another waste of green belt land? Could we suggest moving the site elsewhere? And then it's wishful thinking, but You know, it's worth a question.
You're welcome to ask the question. Decisions in relation to this have been going on, I think, since about 2008. So I think it's a little bit late to the table on that one. Councillor Hughes.
I had a follow-up about the traffic things and then some about the wider issues that were raised. Firstly, we don't seem to have any control over when these works happen. That Amy was going to start in January, and now we think they may start in May. So that means we're sort of over a barrel, and also the people responsible for delay are also the people checking the traffic. And we're told that, you know, congestion won't be as bad as it was in 2018. But I wondered whether any modelling has been done on the impact of the actual works on both existing residents, but also on these 130, you know, households who move in, and on the industrial development. That seems to me to be a problem. I also wondered whether the additional road thing, how the additional roads and road alterations in Cricket Lane and elsewhere, whether they met the requests at the end of the first speaker, whether and they will all be happening at the same time, or it depends on Amy's plan. So I'd like a bit more about roads and whether we have anything we can do to make sure, you know, the work is actually done, or whether the county council has some control over Amy, or whether Amy just, you know, operates rather independently. But the other thing I wondered was about these additional conditions, and it's because we're told that this planning, we've got a whole list of conditions. Some have been discharged, some haven't. And given, I wondered particularly about, I think it's on page 44, which is, condition 10 lays down, which apparently has been, well, it's clear to it, that how the developers are supposed to act in terms of the construction plan, and whether when we're, you know, perhaps talking to planning enforcement, we could make sure that all the things about dirt, noise, times of working and so on, types of vehicles are being adhered to. And the other one was, because we have heard a lot of, you know, as councillors in other contexts, the tree and hedgerow retention and protection, which is clause 14. And there was some way that we're sort of, as well as this particular section 73 thing, we've got a review of all the clauses, whether we can somehow emphasise the particular importance of these, and that somehow manage to make the enforcement more realistic. So the roads, how they're all going to work together, what impacts there'll be while they're being done, so we can hope have any control over when they're done, and then the other issues.
Okay, so should we take the roads question first, since that was the point?
In any order.
It's okay. I would say that.
Yeah, sure. So in terms of all the works coming together, that's quite a crucial thing that has happened in negotiation between us as Staffs County Council Highways, National Highways, which in simple terms is in charge of the A38, things that affect it directly. The applicants, so both applicants, and then Amy. So it's not all that, it's all on Amy, to be fair. We all have to be party to agreements, legal agreements, as highway authorities with the applicants, ensure the works are done to a standard and then completed and paid for. So there's been some delay in pulling all of that together. That's fair, and that can be put at the door of Boston County Council, National Highways and the applicants in terms of how easy that is. But it's never easy to do it when you're trying to combine. The benefit of combining them, which comes to one of your questions, is we can have control as to highway authorities as to what happens when. And clearly, some of the works on the A38 are going to involve significant impact to A38 traffic. And sometimes there may be closures, which will be locally diverted onto our roads as a county council. So all of that is coordinated. We don't have all those answers yet, because the testing to do that will be part of the ongoing works when the contractor has a signed 278 agreement, and then they put a programme forward for us to consider, Lichfield to consider, and for National Highways to consider. All that traffic management and impact will be looked at in the round to try and get the best way forward for the network, which ultimately then is for the residents. But that is going to happen. I think, yes, Amy, there is some responsibility for Amy, but it's a highway authority thing. They've done the design work as a consulting arm, and they'll be doing the construction work. So there's still some control we have as authority. That's okay for the highways question.
I was just saying, it is quite a tricky one. We want improvements onto the infrastructure, but at the same time, got to decide when we want those improvements to be done. Yes, promises get made, and then someone else is responsible for doing them. And to a large extent, they can't then turn around to Amy and say, "You've got to do it now." Anything else, Councillor Hughes?
There was the things about the conditions and how
Edges.
and where we are with the condition 10 and condition 14 seem to be ones that were particularly mentioned and have been mentioned in other contexts. The construction, the control of the actual construction in terms of the impact on existing residents.
So I understand that the construction management plan for the residential phase has been
Yeah,
that's been discharged.
yeah, right.
For the commercial element is undetermined at the current time. So that would be, so going back to the residential phase, which I take is obviously going to be the most pressing element for people of Cricket Lane because it's nearest to them, and also because the commercial element's not come forward yet. You know, the details approved as part of that condition discharge application would be what developer should be being assessed against in terms of compliance with the approved details, whether there's any infringements of those approved details that constitute enforcement infringements, for example. That's something that needs to be looked at. As has been said, we have had complaints from local residents, both sent directly to us, but also that we're made aware of by colleagues in enforcement because they know that we continue to work on this site. So yeah, does that help at all? I don't know.
Yeah, I just wonder whether if as we're probably going to have to approve this, some sort of, you know, mention that these are conditions in place and that they should be adhered to might be appropriate. I don't know.
I think, through you, Chair, I think, I think we're dealing with two different issues here. Clearly, we've got the Section 73 application that's dealing with the highways, and there's conditions within the original planning permission that are basically picking up on the points which the resident on the lane was referring to. So, if you look at condition 10, as you've rightly said, Councillor Hughes, all of the concerns which have been raised this evening. We've got construction working times, we've got air quality, we've got dust control. I think those are all items which are, in my mind, as a lawyer, enforcement matters. So, as a consequence, I think we take the divorce act from consideration of the Section 73 application. I think it's now down to the enforcement team at the council to actually look into these issues, because if the developer is acting contrary to this condition, clearly there's a whole suite of enforcement measures which can actually be taken. So I think that's probably going to be a step.
I do understand that. I just think that this has come up in a particular context that's worth addressing.
Thank you, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Rushton.
Councillor Hughes might have asked a very similar question, so if you've already answered, I do apologise. But the data that's been presented judges what the traffic flow will be like. Does that also include the time of time of fixing the roundabout? Because I imagine there'll be increased traffic due to construction on the roundabout. So does the data reflect the added traffic from 130 houses onto the added traffic due to the construction of the roundabout?
Yeah, please.
So through you, Chair, it doesn't. So in terms of the operational traffic that has permission, and if this application is seeking to vary that, it's only the traffic that would exist when the development is open with the existing traffic. That doesn't mean necessarily construction traffic is ignored. So with an environmental statement, there would need to be an assessment, and that will be presented as part of the application. You would look at construction traffic. But with this application, that hasn't been the case. So the only teams really that are analysing construction traffic is Amy and their consultants to present that to us as the Highway Authority for the local network and National Highways for the trunk road network. So we'll be presented with some modelling, but it doesn't say in the planning.
Okay. Any other councillors, any other observations or questions? Councillor Ashton.
As you say that the Swinfen Island construction traffic is not included in the model, would the construction traffic for the remainder of the Cricket Lane site be in the model, or are we just looking at residential and commercial traffic, excluding the construction?
Yeah, if that's okay. So yeah, there's no modelling in terms of the planning world for the construction traffic.
So in other words, the traffic flow is going to be considerably higher than what we see here.
Well, it depends how high the construction traffic is. So
yeah,
not all construction traffic sits in the main peak. So often, and we can control construction traffic by dictating when it can start, when it can finish, sit within the peak, what has to sit outside the peak. We can do that in planning terms, and we can do that in highway terms.
At the moment, that seems to be ignored if we're to believe the residents. So enforcement is even more necessary. Thank you.
Councillor Galvin.
Councillor Ashton stole my thunder somewhat with this. I don't live in Lichfield, but today I had the misfortune of following my sat nav through this road, and it was a nightmare. And I was late for my meeting in Northampton because of the traffic in Lichfield. What enforcement can we do now to minimise the disruption to the people there? And I was thinking as well, yeah, I can see the need to build houses. I can see the need for business and employment opportunities. We don't control the traffic, and it continues to be, as bad as my experience this morning. How much financial damage are we going to do to central Lichfield if people can't get in and out and will avoid the area because traffic's so poor? So it's around that, you know, can we enforce that sooner than maybe we have been, or maybe I was just really unlucky this morning. So
I need some clarification on what we mean by potential enforcement in terms of.
I think we
the question
looking at the variation 73, which is in relation to the moving of the start date to this junction, and then other aspects that have come up in relation to conditions that are currently in place, which people feel are being breached. And that need enforcement action. I don't think, and I'll check with Stuart, that we're in a position to set different construction conditions around the overall site by the amendment to the 73.
I think through you, Chair, point in relation to a Section 73 application is that it's specific to what we're thinking about tonight in relation to changes in the actual condition, you know, the change to the 130 houses, things of that nature. But I think the point is the suite of conditions on the original permission should provide all of the opportunity for enforcement colleagues to actually take necessary action. And there's no reason why, you know, members, if they feel it appropriate tonight, to actually indicate to the enforcement team that they would like, you know, the enforcement team to actually investigate the concerns of local residents and local councillors. So, you know, that might well be a way forward. In relation to actually controlling traffic flow, I don't think that is something that we could reasonably condition tonight. It doesn't, it's not appropriate.
No,
It wouldn't pass the tests. What made for a sound planning condition.
Richard?
Just a point to add to that, I think, before any more questions. So the one thing that could happen is if there is a condition that perhaps references a construction management plan, it's for something that's already under construction. If the operative or the applicant or the developer isn't meeting that construction management plan because they're putting traffic on the network in times that were specifically set out they couldn't, that is a planning enforcement matter. And I can commit to working with enforcement colleagues to see what that is. But I'm not sure it relates to this application. But if there are some general breaches of the residential construction management plan that this current site has, then I can, you know, look at those with enforcement.
Thank you. And I would be grateful if you could take that away to speak to traffic enforcement. Councillor Wallens.
Thank you, Chair. And back in relation to traffic and so forth, because I know the London Road during rush hour traffic, especially coming out of Lichfield towards Birmingham, it can be chocker, considering the fact on the roundabout, you can be waiting a good 5-10 minutes. Does the data that you lot have gathered reflect on rush hour traffic and so forth?
So yes, it does, and we haven't gathered data. We've reviewed the data that's been presented to us. We have our own data as well, so we can validate generally. You know, we've got equipment and we've got models that can do that. So yeah, it looks at rush hour in both the morning and the afternoon. It will assess if there's any peak hour that sits within those peaks. Some development can trigger different traffic patterns. Clearly, school in the afternoon is a peak, but not necessarily the same as the employment peak or people coming home from other work. So it depends on the location, but the answer is yes, we've looked at data.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Mears.
Good evening. This evening, coming into the meeting, the reason I was late was because the traffic was at a standstill on the A38 coming from Sutton towards Lichfield, and it was at a standstill from Weeford Island. The traffic is getting worse and worse, and it's taken half an hour to do less than a couple of miles. The proposal that we delay improvements to that island just before we come into Lichfield, based on discussion of traffic leaving Lichfield, doesn't seem to accommodate the traffic coming into Lichfield. So you could double the problem that's being discussed tonight, and taking into account also that the developers don't seem to be paying any heed to the existing conditions. This would just allow further leniency to occur because the existing conditions aren't being enforced, and we're proposing that we relax these conditions as well, which will just make the situation even worse for everyone that's living in Lichfield. You know, I'm disappointed to hear that enforcement isn't being taken, and disappointed to hear that the traffic coming into Lichfield doesn't seem to be taken account of either.
Okay, thank you. I think we've covered enforcement largely. It's a matter that's come up tonight, and I'm sure that it's been reported in elsewhere, but we've had an assurance today that that'll be taken forward so that to work with enforcement and highways to ensure that some of the all of the conditions are adhered to. Councillor Powell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was just going to say, if you hadn't done that, I was going to say that I would move that we ask our enforcement team to treat this as a matter of urgency. The residents obviously have proper concerns, they're not just their imagination. It needs looking at. And secondly, one thing you're all missing from the traffic flows and everything else is the fact the area of Lichfield, Fradley, all round it is growing apace. So to say, yes, the figures are a bit less because of historic reasons, we're actually growing like mad around here.
Yeah.
They should be looking forward, not looking backwards, and they should treat this as a matter of urgency and stop pussyfooting around and get on with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, a lot of people have had a chance to say something. Does anyone have a proposal to either go with the proposal or against the proposal? Is anyone prepared to come forwards to or the other?
I'll propose against.
Okay. Does anybody wish to second? Do you have any grounds for opposing, please?
There's always that, isn't there? No, to be honest, I don't think there is there? When we think about what the highways have said, there's no.
Yeah, I mean, from my point, it's a very, very frustrating one. I understand that agreements put in place for this work to take place first. And I hear the argument that in 2018, the traffic levels were this, but now they're lower. That's great, but in 2018, we might already have needed the work. It might have needed to be half as much to not need the work. So to say that it's the same as 2018 doesn't particularly mean much to me, I've got to be honest. But the developers aren't the people that are responsible for putting in the infrastructure. The infrastructure's in the hands of the county council and of their contractors only. We're being asked whether or not we are prepared to allow the continuation of the development of that site, put a hold to it, and see what appeal says or what happens as a result of that. Councillor Rushton?
I'll say I think we're stuck in the mud on this one, maybe mud on Cricket Lane being left. But I think without bad mouthing county council, I don't know how you can, agree with plans without forward thinking about the extra construction on the Swinfen Island. But I think we're stuck here, and I'm going to have to begrudgingly approve of, nominate approval of this. But I do hope that enforcement look into the issues highlighted by the President. But yeah, it's begrudgingly. I don't think that we've got a ground for refusal here.
Thank you. Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I would second approval because I think that we are stuck, but we've heard that there are problems. We hope that they're going to be addressed. It's important that they are addressed for the residents' sake. And I really feel that we have no option but to approve this tonight.
Councillor Anketell.
Am I able to make an amendment?
You can propose an amendment.
Propose that we give them permission subject to them carrying out all the enforcements the previous conditions they're supposed to do.
I'm not sure we can do that, but I'll bow to Stuart.
Chair, no, I think
legal advisor.
Yeah, no, I think the situation is at the moment had resolution to grant from Councillor Rushton. That's been seconded by Councillor Evans. Clearly, in relation to Councillor Anketell is now seeking an amendment, but in a sense, it's an amendment to something that already exists in it's an existing condition. So when I was speaking to Councillor Hughes, I said it was important to separate the enforcement side of this and the actual Section 73 application we've got before us. So in many ways, I think the appropriate way to deal with the enforcement side of this is somebody to actually second Councillor Powell's suggestion, his recommendation, that enforcement actually look into this as a matter of urgency. So pick it up in that sense. So if somebody would second Councillor Powell's recommendation, I think that would be the more appropriate way forward.
So that's an action seconded.
Yes.
Who was it? Councillor Mears. Right. Got quite a few people now who want to speak again. Right. I'm conscious that we have had a long discussion over a lot of this. Right, if we are going to have one, if you can just come straight to your back. It was actually Councillor Wallens first. Sorry, Councillor Hughes. Councillor Wallens indicated. So I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there.
No, it's fine. I'll let Councillor Councillor Hughes, sorry, go.
Thank you very much. Can I just ask what section 12.1 means, where it says in response to the legal advice? I mean, I can't, but where it says the granting of an S73 application results in the new planning. All the matters considered in the parent consent of their being considered. Does that not provoke us into considering wider issues? You then list all the ones you've decided, all
Basically a section 73 application, simply for the variation of this condition. So as a consequence, a new permission will be issued with all the outstanding conditions thereon, the amended condition as well. So you get a new permission. The existing permission also exists. It does allow potential review of other matters within the application, but what it doesn't allow you to do is to change the nature of the application before us. So we can't widen it considerably. I suppose in a way that's what concerns me tonight, in a sense that we have the enforcement side of this, which understandably everybody's concerned about, but I think that's for another place. I think that is for the enforcement team. I think that's for officers to talk to the enforcement team, and I think we can probably properly deal with that through Councillor Powell's recommendation, which, if that is seconded, is something that can be taken forward.
Okay. At the moment, we've got the suggestion that enforcement action be taken. To be honest, that part is a little bit irrelevant to the rest of our decision. So on the basis of that bit, so that we can get that bit out of the way, it's proposed by Councillor Powers, seconded by Councillor Mears. All those in favour of referring this to our enforcement for further action, further urgent action. Thank you, and that is unanimous. Thank you. Getting back to the matter in hand, which is the proposal for the variation of condition 73. So under section 73, variation of the condition, we have a proposer in Councillor Rushton and I have a seconder in Councillor Evans. Unless someone's got something absolutely vital they think is going to alter the course of the universe, I'm going to move to the vote. So all those in favour of the section 73 amendment, which is to allow developers to construct commercial and residential properties to the amount set prior to the construction, the Swinford roundabout improvements. Can I have a show of hands of all those in favour, please? Reluctant in favour or favour in favour? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. All those against, please. And abstentions, please.
2 abstentions.
2. Right, thank you very much for the debate. The application for Cricket Lane, which is 25/00267/OUT has been passed today at committee, 7 votes to 3 with 2 abstentions. Thank you very much to the speakers who spoke. These things are never straightforward, and my apologies for that. We don't find them straightforward either. Thank you very much. You're quite welcome to, unless you want to listen to another very similar one. No. That doesn't count you lot.
Done.
Need to do a bit of work about tidying the site up.
Right. Moving on. Our next application is Arkle Farm, Ashby Road, application 25/00631/OUT MEI. And this is going to be presented to us by Claire Saint, and we have one speaker afterward, which is on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this application is Arkle Farm, application reference 25/00631/OUT MEI. This is the resubmission of the previously refused application 24/00457/OUT MEI. Here you can see the location plan, the red line plan, which shows the extent of the application site. This is an aerial view of the site with, to the south is obviously Tamworth and to the west is Wigington. This shows the extent of the development at the moment as well. So as you can see, we've started in this bottom left corner and it will spread north and east. These are some photographs which were actually in the report pack, photo pack as well, but I thought it was helpful to see some of the development that the applicant has sent to me. For full disclosure, on Friday, the application is being brought to committee due to an objection from Wigington and Hopworth Parish Council. And on Friday, I received a further email which shows that the objection is being upheld, which is the reason why it's at planning committee tonight. This has been uploaded to the website, shown here too, just so that everybody's fully aware that we've had this, the maintaining of their objection. This application is another Section 73 application, which proposes to remove conditions 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 and 30, and to vary condition 29. Conditions 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 and 30 all relate to a monitor and manage mitigation strategy, which all relate to highways, and were set by the Secretary of State on the application's appeal. Condition 29 specified that no more than 500 dwellings should be occupied before the monitor and manage strategy was approved. The phasing plan here, which hopefully you can see, shows the development progression with phase 1 outlined in the red. I'm not sure it comes up very clearly, but it comes around this here, goes to the the most southwesterly part of the site, and then the blue section is phase 2 here, which includes the school and the community centre. All is down here in that green section, and the community centre in the yellow. This is phase 2 will be starting early next year. The justification for this is that the applicant has supplied traffic data from 2021 and also 2024, which is shown in section 2.4 of the transport statement technical note, which highways have assessed, and which compared traffic data submitted to Tamworth Borough Council for the Ashby Road development along with the 2021 data, and showed similar results. During the course of this application, the applicant and County Highways have discussed the data submitted and negotiated to agree that conditions 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 and 30 could be removed, and condition 29 would now have new triggers: 400 homes, Cumberford Road, Gilway Lane and Coton Lane junction improvements, and 450 homes for the Gungate, Offer Drive, Mountain Junction improvements. This tighter timescale was agreed and accepted to be a sensible solution to avoid 2 lots of disruption on the highway, as the previous triggers were 200 homes and 500 homes. So it's now been brought closer together to lessen that disruption for local residents. Part of these reasons for these conditions originally was to allow the developer to work with highways to monitor the traffic data and to secure the right timing for the mitigation works. Agreeing to these changes will replace a fairly speculative monitor and manage approach with specific mitigation and triggers, and allow more certainty for the local area and residents, and obviously the deliverability of these homes. This approach is now agreed with Staffordshire County Highways, as opposed to the last time this was brought to committee when Staffordshire County Highways were against that. And this is recommended for approval. I have got some plans as well of images of where those sites are if you're not sure where they are, and obviously the drawings, but let me know if you want to look at those more closely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We now have one speaker, Rebecca Mitchell, who's going to, you're allowed to speak for up to 5 minutes. Don't feel you have to. But you'll be given 30 seconds notice coming to an end. Okay, and it'll start as soon as you start to talk.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. It's obviously not necessary for me to repeat what your officers have already set out. Mr. Evans is also here from Staffordshire Highways, who is obviously best placed to explain the reasons why the Highway Authority no longer objects to the application and can answer any questions that you may have. This application follows on from the previous application that the Planning Committee refused earlier this year. It's worth emphasising that the only reason the application was refused and the only reason why at that time the Highway Authority was objecting was because it felt there was insufficient information to approve at that time. The specific concern raised was that there needed to be an assessment showing that the Arkle Farm development, together with the now consented Browns Lane scheme, would not have any unacceptable impacts. This assessment that was requested is included with this application, and responding to concerns raised by members at the last committee also takes into account more recent traffic data. This has been scrutinised in detail over several months by both the local planning and highway authorities, with a lot of consideration and discussions to agree appropriate triggers for delivery of the proposed mitigation schemes. Highways raises no objection, and your officers are also again recommending approval. I just want to add that I fully appreciate that when changes to developments are proposed, that there will be naturally concerns, possibly also some scepticism, and that you have a responsibility as the planning committee to consider all applications properly. It goes without saying. But the application before you this evening is one that has been rigorously scrutinised, and I hope it will give you some reassurance that it doesn't materially change what has been approved. It will simply clarify what the precise mitigation will be, giving certainty to everybody about when they will be delivered, and will ensure that the highway network operates as it should with no unacceptable impacts. Finally, I would just like to reiterate what I said last time. We are absolutely committed to deliver this development properly and to do so as quickly as possible, not just the new homes, both market and affordable, but also the social and physical infrastructure that's so important, the open spaces, the community centre, the school, sports facilities and so on, to support the community. And we hope we'll make it a great and attractive place to live and visit. Thank you again for your time. I hope that you will support the officer's recommendation and grant permission tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Well within the 5 minutes. Before I go to others on the floor, I just got one question. It might just save a little bit of time if I ask Mark Evans, who spoke very eloquently last time, against, to reassure us that he is not quite as against it as he was.
Thank you, Chair. I take that as a compliment. Thank you, because I probably won't get another one. Thank you very much. For members who were here last time, I will go over ground a little bit for members that weren't here last time. In summary, when we were presented with the application last time, my objection from a highway authority point of view, that the applicant was using somebody else's data, somebody else's work. And my objection was that was not viable, legal, in our opinion, and that they should go away and do the work themselves, produce a document by themselves, and hopefully replicate what they were trying to replicate when we spoke last time at committee. So members made the decision to agree with my stance. The applicant has since gone away, produced their own document, to approve their own application. And in that document, they have updated and verified data, traffic data, which has been scrutinised not only by myself, but also by internal modelling colleagues. We have dedicated traffic modellers within the authority. They know more about it than I do. And they have come back and said it is okay, it is satisfactory, it has been done correctly. After that point was agreed, I then moved on to look at the triggers that the applicant was requesting. Obviously, in the current monitor and manage documentation, there are various hoops, various trigger points that stops housing development. And obviously the applicant is wishing to remove those triggers with the latest documentation. In the latest document, they wish to be able to develop directly without hindrance to 500 units, 500 dwellings, which is above the current level in the current monitor and manage approved planning document. However, their modelling shows that there was capacity in the highway network with the latest data that has been agreed to get to a point, but we at the County Council disagreed it was 500. That was too high in our opinion, based on the data that was put before us. We therefore entered negotiations with the developer on two fronts. Firstly, to renegotiate the trigger point. We thought it was too high based on the data they had provided. Secondly, we were also concerned, which is what you've heard in the previous application that we've just discussed at Cricket Lane, concerns regarding the impact of these roadworks on the network. Have to be done, the developer will pay for it, but will obviously be an impact on building them. So therefore, we had a two-stage conversation. We as the County Council wished for the Humberford Road, the Dualway, Coton Lane double mini island solution, which we have agreed to come first. That is the smaller and the quicker one to be delivered. And secondly, the larger of the offsite highway works, which is within the Gun Gate corridor, to come second. Obviously, the applicant wanted to do them all at once. However, if you do them all at once, there is no escape route for any residents because every road you would try would have roadworks on it. So we successfully negotiated with the applicant to stagger the delivery of the required offsite highway works, which is in your report pack and which Claire, the planning officer, has mentioned. And we've also agreed a staggered delivery trigger, which we are happy with as a highway authority because we believe there is still capacity left in the network for that to work. The applicant understood our viewpoint, our opinion, and has agreed to deliver that. Therefore, in summary, apologies for taking long, but hopefully it makes sense. Therefore, in summary, I, as a representative of the County Council, have changed my mind since I was before you last time and are recommending approval based on the data that has been provided, based on the discussions and the goodwill shown by the developer to compromise. We believe there is a viable solution to take this forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Those of you who did look on the District Council website, that particular document is not very interesting reading, and it's 498 pages long. So thank you, Highways, for working your way through that. Speakers, please, or anybody wish to? Councillor Galvin?
Yeah, listen to what Highways have said. I remember the meeting when we had about this before. I propose we accept it and go towards the vote.
And second that.
Anyone else wish to speak prior to us going to vote?
Other than to say, yeah, say thanks to Mark for actually doing something that really looks as though it's actually given a decent result for a change. So thank you, Mark.
Okay, on that basis, I'll move to the vote in relation to the application, which is once again a variation of the a section 73 application to vary, to remove the conditions 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 and 30 and vary condition 29. All those in favour, please.
Two, 6, 7, 8, 10.
And those against? And abstentions, please.
2 abstentions.
So for the purpose of those watching, this particular application has been approved on with a vote of 10-0 with 2 abstentions. Thank you very much, everyone. Before I do move on to the confidential part of the meeting, can I ask that it be recorded within the minutes, the fact that we've asked for the enforcement actions, and possibly at the next meeting, could we have not the next meeting, the meeting after next, because the next one's very, very soon, isn't it? The meeting after next, if we could have an update from enforcement as to some of their findings, if they've found anything. Okay, thank you to any public who have remained to watch this. I hope you've enjoyed it. We will be back again at the beginning of October. We're now going to move into the private section of this particular one. So that as the public would be that as the publicity will be prejudicial to the public interest by reason of the confidential nature of the business to be transacted, the public and press be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business, which would involve the likely disclosure or exempt information as defined in paragraph 4 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 19